evening, Sláinte. It's been a while. It's been a long while. And do you know what? Whether or not we get people on or not, I'm not too sure. I think it's just a good opportunity to start another series of these shows. So welcome everyone who is coming on tonight. So thank you very much. With me tonight, David Boyd-Armstrong, okay, representing Shortcross Distillery, Rademon Estate. Absolutely brilliant to have you on, David. I really do mean that. You've hit the ground running. You know, the festival was great. You know, you had a very good selection of spirits for us to try. It wasn't just whiskey. There was other things there for everyone to get their, you know, to get a flavour of what goes on at the estate. But we've now got whiskey, and whiskey is now available for people. You know, as a very small release happening as your inaugural release. So welcome, William. Welcome, David. How are we? Listen, it's nice that you joined us, and I'm sure, like, you know, we're going to learn a little bit about this whiskey. So you gave me some, David. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. So I'm going to pour it. Yeah, David, what's it like? What's it like right now? You know, knowing that you've got a whiskey out there. What's the feeling? What's it like? Is it a wee tingle in the tummy?
Yeah, I suppose it's what maybe people don't realize is this is month or year 10.5 of our journey for the distillery. Fiona and I, we got married back in 2011 in June 18th, and just to get to this stage, I suppose, kind of feels surreal now. You know, all the talking, all the visits that you do, all the people you meet, the decisions that you make, just to actually finally have something that's in a bottle that is your own is it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, it's surreal, I suppose, and I know that's an easy word to say, but it actually really does feel surreal. This has been the last 8 days have been a real whirlwind. You know, from
Good.
being
That's
down at
good,
Power
David.
Sport, and yeah, it's been fantastic.
That's a good thing. I want to say there's people coming on, so I just want to say hi to people. That we've got some lovely, great people popping in. So Nastasai Fitness evening. Thank you very much. Mark McShane, good to see you. Connor, how are we? Robert, also Eric Vander, and how are you? It's great to see some people, just familiar faces, coming back on and watching the show. So thank you very much. I wasn't too sure if I was going to do this or when I was going to do it again. I know that I wanted to get to talk about, you know, Belfast Whisky Week and our plans and what we have going forward. But this was a good opportunity. You said to me, look, can we talk about the new whiskey? Let's be honest, and from the outset, there's maybe a little bit of controversy about this bottle, and I think it's nice that we have the opportunity to talk freely, you know, and discuss that. In fact, last night we had some discussion within our own whiskey club here in Belfast. People were asking lots of questions. I said, you know what? I'll ask those questions tomorrow. Let's ask some questions. You know, let's try and you know, see what David has to say, and you know, and hopefully we get a good idea of why we should be celebrating this whiskey, like celebrating it, and really taking to it, because I'm excited, David. Just like, you know, you're saying it's a bit surreal. For me, it's surreal. You know, for me, it's really kind of, you know, we've got something coming out of Northern Ireland which is not Bushmills, and that to me is just unreal. Like, you know, for us that have been on a journey, you know, maybe in the last 6-7 years watching whiskey and the turns it's been taken, people saying we're going to have a distillery here, we're going to have a distillery there, people actually putting bricks down and putting the, you know, the stills down and actually making the whiskey. It is so good now to see this. It's so good just to see the bottle available. So I'm excited for it. I really am, and I'm buzzing because I know it tastes good. You know, I was lucky enough to taste this, and I'm going to be very biased. I have to be very biased. Why shouldn't I be biased? You know, people are like, you know, pick your favourites. It's not my favourite, but this is good whiskey. Do you know what I mean? Is it my favourite one to come out of Northern Ireland since Bushmills? Of course, because it's the only one. So, yeah, well done. David, you caught me there. So, evening, Louise. Evening, Peter. How are things? Oh, good to see you. David, what's in my glass? What is in this glass?
Okay.
Just explain.
So I suppose, guys, I suppose this is from the first two casks that we filled back in March 2016. So to put everything in a little context, because I kind of get the feeling everyone thinks that we're kind of Middleton sized as a distillery, but we're not. We're actually really small, and small in a good way. Small in the sense that we're independent. We can do whatever we want. We can create the flavors that we want to create. But we're also small in the sense that, as we like to say, is we're really sustainably sized. We don't need to be massive. We don't need to be much smaller, because you can't really be much smaller. But it just means that we can focus on the things that are important to us, which is actually all about creating flavor. So I suppose when we produced this, what was the new make that would become this whiskey back in the first quarter, March of 2016, we were really small. Like, we had a 450 litre copper pot still that we used for both the wash and the spirit distillation, which is arguably at that time was the smallest whiskey still anywhere in Ireland, and is now still one of the smallest. We had only two 1,000 litre washbacks. So in principle, at most we could produce, without producing gin, which we were doing at the same time, was 50 casks a year. And I think in 16 we produced about 13 or 14 casks. So people have to understand that this is a really small release from a really small set of casks.
Yeah, to stop you, I'm going to stop you there, David. That in itself, that's a big explanation. You know, for a lot of whiskey drinkers out there, and I know we've got some great whiskey drinkers in here. People who go out and drink just about everything. They'll drink the Redbreast and the Jamesons and the Bushmills, and they'll go and drink Scotch. Great to see Heather is about to drink the Lowlands bottlings that we gave out at the Whiskey Week. Different people in here drinking different things. The size of the distilleries we have in Ireland are not huge. We do have, we do have IDL with the Middleton distillery, and the processes going on there in massive amounts and mass quantity. And we have Bushmills pumping out a lot. We then have West Cork pumping out lots of liquid now, GND, and then we kind of go down in size and we get really small, very small Cologne. Copeland round the corner from you, not too big either. Again, Ecklandville, not huge, but bigger than yourselves. And then, you do have a small setup. I think people might have got confused slightly, and I think people see this as your gin was big. If people know the gin, people think, gee, there's a massive amount of gin out there. Shortcross gin, everyone knows Shortcross gin. It did really well. It is part and parcel of Northern Ireland's gin renaissance period, fact. And yet, the whiskey industry, Northern Ireland specifically, is completely different to gin. And it really is. The production is completely different. And that low level of quantity you're talking about, in 1 year producing circa 15, casks, give or take, whatever it is, that's not a lot. And for your first caskings, your first, casks to come out, and for it to go into your first bottling, that doesn't leave you a lot of liquid. It's kind of, it's actually very special that going on that kind of idea. GND have 300,000 casks today. That's a lot of casks down at GND. It's a lot of liquid being pumped. I mean, yes, lots of grain whiskey in there, but what we have here, David, is single malt. We have something very special. You've not gone standard here. This isn't been first fill bourbon finished with something. These are two separate casks that you've used and you've marred them together. Yes. What are the two casks?
Yeah, the two different casks. Yeah, two different Grand Cru classic Bordeaux wine casks, actually from two very different cooperages. Both though are, I suppose, rather than thinking about that they're wine casks, I think it's important as well to think about the actual oak itself. They're both Quercus alba, but it's how it actually the wine influence with the Quercus alba or American oak, how that works together. And then, of course, it's what the wood that we use as well to finish the whiskey as well is the other little bit of I suppose black magic or fun, as I prefer to say. and actually crafting something. So yeah, it's when we laid down these casks, one of the things that we said that we wanted to do as a first release is we said, look, everyone does something that has bourbon or sherry, maybe port, or generally that's been the rule up until now. I can't tell what the future's going to be because hell, we're the first in NI. I think we're only the second or third on the island of the new, if you like, of the new wave of distilleries to do something that's their own. But we say, we'll do something a little bit different. And we had these casks that we had got in, and the more we looked up and nosed them and thought about, what, wouldn't it be good to do something with these and see, and we're small, we didn't bring in a master distiller or bring in someone else, but I have to say is we wanted to try and learn, and we're going to make mistakes, we're going to get things right, we're going to get things wrong, but actually with this, it's actually going to come together really nicely.
Okay, good. Now I'm going to take, if there's some comments here, I'm going to have a wee look in the chat. So yes, Heather, enjoy your evening. It's great to see you on. Peter's saying that he loves your structure. Keep it small and dynamic. John Dunn, is that a question or is that a statement? It says what you have is a 5-year whiskey at £300. And he says Virgin. I would say that completely wrong if I tried to say it. So Chinkapin. Yes. Yep, oak, high char, been done before. Now, is that a statement or is that a question? Has it been done before, or is this a question? Or is that
it's very been done before in the context of other distilleries and other whiskey regions, but actually it's not been done in the sense of the combination that we have used hasn't been done before in the island of Ireland. We know that. People, I think there's been a Chinkapin finish that came out from one of the guys in Dublin, but actually how we have put these casks together is different. And, just to say a little bit, everyone thinks about American oak, everyone thinks about primarily Quercus alba. Now, Quercus alba or American oak, which is what 99% of bourbon is aged in, where the requirement is simply it has to be aged in white oak. Everyone thinks of the vanilla, the tannins, the structure, you get the sweetness. What actually Chinkapin or Quercus Muhlenberg actually gives you a slightly different flavor profile. In fact, it's almost like sweet almonds. It's more nutty, it's more rich. And actually, when we started to look at the whiskey that we were getting as those first two casks started to mature, that sort of nuttiness actually from the red wine started to come through. And it was a flavor that we happened to really like. And without getting into what we're doing with our cask program now, because we've been pretty quiet about that, Chinkapin and the use of virgin oak is something that I'm quite fascinated with. So actually, we sort of said, well, actually, how could we dial that up? How could we amplify that certain character and actually not bring a bourbon influence, but actually bring some of those characteristics that people like from bourbon casks, the sort of the sweetness, the sort of the char, the vanilla structure, and just tweak that a little bit. So what we found was that Chinkapin was actually a really good choice to bring into this whiskey and really finish it and amplify certain aspects of it.
Okay, no, that's good. And look, I think there's been let's not beat around the bush. There's a lot of debate just now about the cost of this product, and so I'd like to park costs for a second and let's just talk about some historical parts of this and what this has really done here. We are in a period of growth, big growth all over the Irish whiskey industry, and there's a lot of distilleries who are now putting out their first products. Okay, some are putting out at 3 years old, and some are waiting much longer. This is the first of its kind to be released specifically at 5 years. I don't think any distillery waited for a 5-year-old product to come, to be its first release. We may see, and there's no doubt, we're going to see other distilleries potentially releasing higher age statements or whiskey which is older as a first release. We know that will probably happen. But this is the first of its kind, 5-year-old. It sits in a different kind of comfort zone for a lot of distilleries because they're initially trying to get those whiskies out as quickly as possible. And there's been a raft of whiskey which has gone out at 3 years old, and a lot of people have tasted it, and that's from Teeling and it's from Waterford, and yes, the Dingles, and we've had that opportunity. We've all had that opportunity of tasting really young whiskey, coming out at different prices. I mean, some of these whiskies have ranged anything between about, I don't know, I think the cheapest first release was about €80. Most expensive so far is about €450 for first releases within Ireland. And I think that, that's a lot of money at different levels for people to be paying for the first bottling. I think you've come out at £300 sterling, and as a statement, it's a statement because you know what? I think that it's a first. We've talked about how small the production run is, how much liquid you actually have. To put it out there, this is a valuable piece of history, not for the people who specifically want to buy it and flip it or sell on at a later stage, but a valuable piece of history that that we can, have as a tangible legacy now for Irish whiskey. So someone who wants to, feel that they have now got something which is, it's going to have substance going forward, something to tell your kids about. No offense, but it's going to be, something that I'll be able to tell my kids. Know that I'm totally into whiskey, and they're like, oh, what, you're doing whiskey again tonight, Dad. What's going on? And I'm like, yeah, no, because it's cool. It's great to talk about. It's so fascinating, and I think having historical pieces like this, if it's £300, I jokingly said, if you charged £1,000 for your first release, it's up to you. It's your prerogative. It's really up to the business to make a decision as to where they think that the price is for their first release. I think what people will get hung up at is that, is this is this what it is? Is it always going to be £300? Is it always going to be expensive whiskey coming from Shortcross? Because you know what, we know it tastes good, so we know that your gin has worked really well. It's not overly expensive. It's reasonably priced. And I think people need a bit of reassurance, no doubt, that this is a one-off. It's a very special opportunity for you to purchase that. It will go into collectors' homes. It will go into the hands of flippers who want to think that they can make money from whiskey in a secondary market. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they definitely don't. But people will buy this and they will drink it because we know that it's getting rave reviews. Now, it won an award. I think you were as shocked as many others that you won something. I heard that you nearly teared up during your speech at the
I did. I cried like a nerd.
Yeah, and I don't want to embarrass you on that, but I think that's actually really humbling to hear. I find it very humbling that you've managed to, and yourself and Fiona have put a hell of a lot of work into the distillery down there. You've had to bide your time. You didn't do, and let's not beat around the bush here. How many distilleries have had the opportunity to turn around and say, listen, I did not go and buy whiskey from elsewhere, label it, and tell you that that this is whiskey and this is what my brand is. You didn't do that, and I'm not slagging any distillery that ever does that, because I think it's fantastic that they even take the opportunity to take the risk to do that. But you didn't do that. You didn't go out, go to GND, go to Cooley, go to Bushmills, go to Middleton and say, listen, give me some whiskey. I've got a distillery coming. I need to, bulk it up. I need to go make some money. I need to do it just now. I need to get my brand out there. You were very quiet. In fact, no one was really talking about Shortcross. No offense. No one spoke about it. There's a couple of us who continually, no doubt, phoned you or messaged you or asked other questions and said, what's happening? Are we getting whiskey? Are you just talking crap? Are you going to be one of these distilleries that pretend they're going to have whiskey and then don't have whiskey? But you are so quiet and very modest and very humbling about the way in which you've got on with just getting the job done, which is making whiskey, crafting it the way you want to do it, and then giving us something that has waited longer, as I say, longer than most other distilleries would even attempt. Like, they want to get out there, they want to showcase their whiskey straight away. You've waited, and I'm probably going to say you probably waited till it was at the kind of sweet spot, that 5-year-old sweet spot where it was working with the cask you were using. So I applaud that, and I think that this is something to then treasure. It's not, we're not looking at short cross whiskey and thinking, oh, this one's not as good as your 10-year-old you had out last year, because you didn't have a 10-year-old last year, because it wasn't like, you didn't have that, cash strength version that you borrowed from Bushmills and labelled yourself. No, you didn't. And you've waited to this point, and this is yours. So that everyone around the world, when they look at Irish whiskey, they've been dumbed down in some respects by having lots of great sorry, the blended influences, that Bushmills era where it was, it's Bushmills blends, the Black Bush and the original, and now the Red Bush over in the States. You've got the Jameson blend. That's Irish whiskey to a lot of people. And then you've got great, other product. You've got the Tullamore Dews, and you've got the, Cooley, which went out on various names around the world. That's what people are used to. And all of a sudden, they've now got new whiskies to try. They've got that Waterford range that they can, I don't know how many bottles they have now, lad, 30, 40 releases, I don't know. But to be honest, you could go chasing those all day long, and you'll never, be able to catch them all. That collection is just springing up and taking over. But people are getting the chance to taste 3-year-old to 4-year-old now, 5-year-old coming whiskies from Waterford. But Dingle have done that experimental series of batches, and watching the progression that they've had. We've now got, I suppose, maybe we'll get something from Ecklandville soon enough. But we've got something here which I find truly unique. Someone who patiently waited for that 5-year period, tasted it, got to the point where, do you know what? You probably could have released it last year. You've decided to do it this year. You've said our first bottle is, to me, a historical piece, but something that should be drunk. I think the price point's spot on. I know that people will argue and say, Paul, you're talking crap. That 300 quid's a lot of money. Of course, it's a lot of money. Jesus Christ! I mean, let's not pretend it's not cheap. But there is something very special about this, and I hope to God that people get the message about how special this is going forward. Now, the taste. David, you can walk me through the taste of this, but there's, do you know what? It does have that beautiful kind of nuttiness that you mentioned there, but there's a lovely kind of dark chocolate thing going on, which is catching me every time I take a drink. I'm really impressed with the taste of it. You got some great reviews, David, and I do want to say this. Belfast Whisky Week, I begged you to get involved the year before, and you shot me down and said, no, Paul, we're just not ready. We're just not ready. And I said, fair play. I mean, I'm not, and when you got involved this year, I was super excited. I was like, yeah, I want to see what's happening here. Because, you're experimental with your gins, and you told me, listen, Paul, I'm going to be really experimental when it comes to whiskey. I'm going to have different types of whiskey. I'm not going to concentrate solely on single malt. I'm going to look at other things. I'm going to look at, potentially peated, malts. I'm going to look at pot stills. I'm going to look at a wide range of whiskey to give everyone, to look at the different flavour profiles. So we were lucky in Belfast Whisky Week because we got to, sample this, the experiment that goes on at Shortcross. You're nearly a mad scientist in some respects, the way you have endeavoured to look at different variations of spirits. So well done to you. But this is great. This is the first release. And I'll be honest, I haven't tasted the first release, which is better. And that is honest. And we've tried them all. But we've tried them all. And do you know what? I know that our club we tasted some really good whiskey last night. We had 6 whiskies last night. We had 2 Scotch, 2 Irish, and 2 from around the world. And our club are so, their expectation levels are up here. So when you give them a new drink, they're like, oh, this better be good. You know what I mean? And, all of our tastings are unique insofar as they never repeat themselves. There's always new whiskey. We don't ever go back to something we've had before. So, I can assure you when this comes to the club, we'll buy a bottle, we'll make sure it comes to the club, we'll drink it and we'll sample it. But I already know what the answer is going to be because people have already been tasting it, at the Whisky Week. I've not heard a bad review about this. The only thing I've heard negative is this cost. And do you know what? If people are going to whinge about cost, do you know what I mean? What they maybe should do, and this is a piece of advice for anyone who thinks that they can whinge about the specific cost of this bottle, is go and build your own distillery. You know, work hard at it. Do you know what I mean? Get to that 5-year period, put your own liquid out, and think about what that first bottle should be worth in terms of the effort, the persistency, the historical, significance of it, and again the flavour profile of it. Think of all those things, and you come up with a price of your first bottling that you think that people should pay in order to be part of that journey. That's my piece of advice. But do you know what? Again, no one needs to listen to it. David, talk me through the taste. Talk me through
okay. So the guys, on the nose with this, now it has been fully matured in red wine before the finishing. But actually, on the nose, those winey notes are more going towards, for me, they're more going towards sweet fortified wine rather than just red wine. There's almost a sherry note, but I think it's more that sort of that older rancio sherry note where it's sort of developed beyond just being fortified wine. But with that as well, there's a lovely what I get is that sort of lovely spice even on the nose. And that sweetness starts to come through. Taste-wise, the sweetness really comes to the fore. Probably a really bad description, but it's sweet, but it's not that bourbon sweetness. It's that sort of sticky sweet. It's that really nice, rich wine note starts from through. I find it coats top and bottom of the mouth.
It's nearly a glazed fruit. That sweetness.
It's that dark fruit really starts to come through, and then the tannins from the wine and the bird notes start to build, and then you're left with that sort of really sweet, smooth, and it is. Smooth's a word we always struggle with whiskey because it can mean so many different things to so many different people. But it is that sort of really smooth sweetness and just that sort of simmering spice across the back of the tongue. It's almost like a really good licorice. It's that sort of intensity of sweet but dark flavors. And for me, it actually it marries really, really well with how the cask components come together, the distillate. So if I was to talk about this whiskey, it's double distilled. It's produced in a small pot still, which means we get a lot more reflux than what we would get with a larger pot still. For the fermentation time, as those who have joined us on Belfast Whiskey Week, this is the first time that we talked about, our fermentation periods being 120 hours, 140 hours plus. This is the first time that we started to really push the boundaries with some of our fermentation. So this whiskey itself was fermented for over 100 hours in terms of the sort of the formation of the wash. So you get a lot of that sort of secondary fermentation starting to come through, and that builds flavors and aromas from the start. We double distill. Now, regardless then or now, we're actually quite specific with our cut points. We know what we want on our on cut, which we know by nose and taste, and we also know what we want on our off cut. And if I'm honest, one of the things that we're quite brutal when we just say enough. We've got the flavors we want. The rest of those flavors and alcohols and oils, we'll get them the next time around. But when we know we're right, that's it. End of story. So we're very specific about that sort of cut window that we take. It's a wide window, but it's not so wide that you're getting into a lot of those heavier oils and fancy components. So in one sense, our spirit is full of flavor, but also it's a clean cut. So we know that when we make that cut point time and time again, that the spirit that we produce is consistent. And I think for us, one of the things that we wanted to do from the very start is we never experimented with very small casks. We always stuck to a minimum of an American standard barrel size, so 200 litres or above, because the whiskey that we release now, we want to show how our whiskey journey develops. If I was to use, say, quarter cask or small cask, we wouldn't be able to actually tell that story. So for us, This whiskey, and I'm going to be clear, I'm not asking anyone to buy this whiskey. If you want to buy our whiskey, fantastic, that's great. What I do want people to do is to come with us on a journey. You can be part of that journey by buying into this whiskey, or you can wait for whatever we have that will come out next. You know, I'm not going to be offended either way, but I want you to come with us on a journey to actually see how our distillery actually evolves over time and what we produce changes. So for us, this whiskey is really important because it's our first release and it shows that new distilleries can produce really great spirit. Now, we have probably been sort of a victim of actually being brave enough to put a proper age statement on a bottle. If I had put this out with no age statement, I can guarantee the fact 50% of the flack that we have had would disappear because people wouldn't have thought about it. But actually, most of the new whiskey that's come out and has been sort of 3 to 5 years, but this is a minimum of 5 years what's in here. You know, so it shows that actually the newer distilleries can produce really, really great spirit. And also, it's a little bit of the myth that we have to wait 10 to 12 to 20 years to actually find something that's good. Because I think this is the beauty of this revival of Irish whiskey. There's so much good spirit being produced, and we don't necessarily have to just think about it in the traditional senses. Now, I've probably talked far too much in a general sense, but for me, this whiskey for us is special, and you know, I'll come back to that in a second if that's okay.
No, look, 100%. And do you know what? Someone said to me the other day, look, we've got, and I'll just take the two major products that we know: Redbreast 12, Bushmills 10. Those two products. I mean, Redbreast 12, 40 to 50 quid, whatever it is in the shops. You know, Bushmills 10, 30 to 40 quid, depending. Those two products are mass produced. They're on a massive scale. They're on a constant turnaround, and they have been for years. That's not going to change. That ain't going anywhere. You know, it's not going to. You know, it's not going to make a difference. But a 10-year-old Bushmills at cask strength, finishing in a fancy cask, is 3-4 times the price, because it's under a smaller amount of bottles, potentially 5,000. You know. And I'm thinking to myself, right, so 5,000 bottles increases your cost by 4 times the amount, and we know it's great spirit, and yet, you know, you've maybe given it a little bit of an alcohol kick and put it into a different cask. But this is slightly different, and I don't think we need to sell your £300 bottle, David. I don't think that's what this is about. This conversation isn't about people, but I just think people need to be reassured that the cost is irrelevant. The second bottles that you come out with, the third bottles, the fourth, the fifth, which is now a constant journey, which is now we're constantly going to see short cross whiskey. You know, we're going to see that now. That's what we're going to see, and we're going to be very lucky to see those coming out. Not every month, but on a regular occurrence now, which is going to be great. You know, and I think that, and again in small batches, because you know you don't have big quantity. You can't just throw out 5,000 bottles. You can't do that. You know, that's not possible. So people will get the chance to taste short cross whiskey. It will not be uber expensive. It will be in around, and it has to be around its competitors. It has to do that in order to compete properly. However, what's going to set it apart? What's going to set it apart is about the taste here. What I would love to think is that everyone in that locality, everyone in that kind of space, you know, where you guys are based, you know, and people in Northern Ireland, the people who drunk, you know, got involved with your gin and fell in love with your gin project, you know, these people will support your whiskey. The people who are the gin drinkers will see, Jesus, those guys made good gin. Love the aged oak gin. Love the flavoured gins that came out, the cask strength gin that you had. Let's look at this. You know, what's whiskey to them, and allowing them to come on the journey. So it's not even about the whiskey drinkers, it's about introducing other people to it. And I think that Northern Ireland will embrace, people of Northern Ireland will embrace, you know, short cross whiskey, and I also think that people around the world will too, because I think they'll understand. And if they get the chance to taste it, there's no doubt they're just going to go, right. This needs to be something that we endeavour to get. John makes a very good point. So well done, John. Waited to a point where market is saturated with new releases. I'm not too sure that David waited to that point, and we can come to that. It's the same week as a Jameson 21-year-old. Interesting. Strange timing. Pre-sale should have flown off the shelf, but not at 300. Now, I want to address those. I don't think David needs to. I think the Jameson 21 at this point, I don't think anyone saw that coming anyway. I know the IDL reps weren't even too sure what was going on there. So that was off the cuff kind of moment, I think, for IDL. Interesting, and I hope people managed to get onto the ballot and get one. Great news if you did, and I hope it tastes great. People were kind of slightly let down by how the 18-year-old was skewed and got to the point where it doesn't necessarily taste like the old 18-year-olds that we expected and loved from Jameson. So hopefully 21's something different. Okay, 2,000 odd bottles, whatever. All right. Is it strange timing? No, this is good timing. I mean, David generally has waited, and I have pressed David. Other people have no doubt pressed David to give this whiskey. For the last 2 years, we've been pressing for this, and I think it's just been got to the point. Now, I actually think this would have been ready and should have been out maybe Belfast Whisky Week. And I think what happened there was, and I'm maybe speaking out of tongue, but I hope David understands it, is that maybe there's an issue with bottles, and glass bottle has been a real freaking problem for the last 6 months, 7 months now because of one, the pandemic, but two, really because of Brexit. And let's not forget to blame the real issues that are taking place right now. And again, that's something where I think that you've been patient, David. You've been patient. I think the consumer has, again. We've talked about how quiet you've been. A lot of these people don't even know that short cross exists. I think by the time maybe 3-4 years down the line, people have got it, will have circulated around the world. Whiskey drinkers will have got it. At the moment, we're very quiet. This is a new. And most people's eyes, this is a brand new distillery. This is brand new whiskey. This is brand new liquid. This is something brand new, and it's going to take time. I want people not to be upset by the cost, because quite frankly, I know what's coming down the line, and I can see people being able to go to the local off license, picking up a bottle of short cross and being really impressed and satisfied that it's value for money and it's not uber expensive. Jonathan says, can't wait to try it. And I know, Jonathan, you'll appreciate it. Connor, I wish I could remember what this tasted like. The IWAs are a bit of a blur. I'm sure they are a bit of a blur. I think everyone that was there definitely enjoyed themselves. I'm absolutely gutted I didn't go. But look, hopefully there's next year. Hopefully we get the opportunity to enjoy it. And do you know what? One of the things about the IWAs, we had lots of conversations about awards. Those that know Brendan Carty know that we've had some major debates, and maybe it's on Sláinte, maybe it's on other sites. We've talked about the awards and what they mean, and I'm going to say something. Celtic Whisky and Negress Whisky Awards, you just couldn't get it any better. I mean, we as the Belfast Whisky Club, and I know the likes of Irish Whisky Society, Kilkenny Whisky Guild, there's loads of groups around the country, are blessed with being given all of these samples for different parts of the awards blind, and we've given we're in most cases it's 24 hours to 48 hours to get the sampling done of all of the whiskies, get the scores in, get them back to the judges, and it's done really impartially. Like, you just don't know. And I think that, David, you've won an award. I don't know how many people were in the category or what the constitution of being in that category was for, but even just to win the award, is something special. The whiskey talks for itself. That's what that award is. It's not blowing up your arse and saying, "Well, well done, David, you've got a whiskey and it's and it's new to the market." No, people drunk your whiskey. Lots of people would have drunk it during the judging panels and really liked it, and thus it was scored well. And it's the same for all the whiskies and all of those awards. The ones that stand out, are the ones that have won the awards. They're the ones that You know, there was one category that we tasted this year. 40, I think it was 44 or 45 whiskies in there. One category. You know, you've got to go through them all. You've got to judge them all. You've got to be impartial because you don't know what you're drinking, you know, and there's one winner from that category. So it doesn't matter if there's 5 in the category or 50 in the category. What's happened there is everyone who's, you know, tasting it has judged it and scored it, and we've got to a winner. And that kind of award is far better than me saying, listen, here's £300, put my name into the hat, and would you get a couple of your judges to taste it, and if they like it, give me a gold seal or, you know, platinum seal or silver seal, whatever it is, you know. That's not what these awards are about. So fair play to those guys, and fair play to the way in which it's been handled. You should be proud of the award. I'm not too sure, is the award, someone asked me the question the other night, is the award going to be on the bottle?
No, I don't. The award's going to sit comfortably in our visitor centre.
So you're not going to put the stickers on the bottles?
Oh, no, I would love to, but you know, I think we didn't expect to be in the short running. We didn't expect to actually even be in it with a chance of winning. So for Fiona and I, you know, it's mind blowing because there is so much good whiskey being produced by the new distilleries. And to get that is for us. I suppose it's not so much as I'm loath to say a vindication, but maybe it gives you that little bit of confidence. Hey guys, you know, we're on a path here where we're making the right steps. You know, this has been. I think, speaking very personally, this has been a journey. You know, people need to maybe put a little bit of perspective. You know, we're not the first of the new wave of distilleries. I wouldn't claim to be. You know, there's people that have been producing whiskey a little bit longer than us. But from an NI perspective, the North, whatever way you want to phrase that, there has been no new distilleries producing new liquid since before the 20s. It's over 100 years. There's significance in that. There's been no whiskey that's been wholly produced by a new distillery in NI since the closure of Old Cumberland in the 50s, Coleraine in the 60s or 70s. I always get it mixed up anyway. You know, so there's a degree of significance about this. And I'll be honest, it wouldn't matter whether or not it was us or someone else first. I'd support it because this is the return of an industry that was so important to us as a region. You know, you go back to 1908 at the peak of whiskey exports from the island of Ireland. Of the 12 million gallons, which is what, 48, 50 million litres of pure alcohol or pure whiskey that was produced, 8 million of that 12 was exported from NI, from Derry, Bushmills, Belfast, all the way around. And it's such a thing that in the space of 2 years, we lost all that heritage. So this is hopefully a marker or a milestone for us as an industry to be coming back to. You know, and yes, we're the first. We've been, you know, people have an opinion. That's grand. They're gonna shoot us down, or they're gonna support us. Hopefully, as I say, most people are going to support us. But hopefully, this is also a marker that for us as enthusiasts, for producers, that this is this industry coming back locally properly. Because it's not just everyone turning the wheel in the end class. This is the first, hopefully, of releases coming out and showing guys. Not only do we have the history, but now we actually are back to doing what we do, which is producing great spirits. For me, one of the things I love about the whiskey industry, Irish whiskey knows no flags, it knows no borders. It's just something like the rest of the food and drink industry that we are really good at on this island. We produce good food and drink, and I think that's something people need to focus on and remember.
You're spot on, and I think that's interesting because it's a huge historical significance. It is huge, and I just want people for it to sink in. We can never get back to the greats or the heights of what whiskey was, and I don't actually think that the industry is even geared to be in that space. I don't think it needs to be in that space, but what it needs to do is it needs to cultivate new whiskey drinkers. It needs to cultivate a new way of appreciating Irish whiskey specifically, because it has to still, and there's a fight there to be had with Scotch whiskey and Scotch whiskey drinkers, and changing the perception of Irish whiskey to allow people to, in particular those new distilleries, to allow people to taste those new whiskies. And I think, Northern Ireland, and particularly County Down, where you're based, will become, certainly in the next 2 years, the hub of Irish whiskey, because you will have on the table new whiskey from Ecklinville, new whiskey from Cologne, new whiskey from Copeland, new whiskey from Hinch. You've got your whiskey. There's 5 specific distilleries specifically, giving us great taste in whiskey. And there's more to come. And there's new ones being set up all over the place in Northern Ireland. And I don't think we'll ever we can't be at that level of production. A lot of these distilleries are so small, and they're creating anything between 10 and 100 casks a year max, and that's the size of these distilleries. They're not huge distilleries, they're not massive producers of whiskey, but what they are is crafty, creating great spirit, creating great whiskey. And there's a lot of talent in Northern Ireland who are coming here to work within the industry. There's a lot of people, homegrown talent, who have gone away to Scotland. Maybe they've learnt to trade in Scotland or down with Bushmills or with IDL, or maybe in America, and they're coming back here and they're wanting to work within the industry. I think there's a lot of people looking at this progress and trying to replicate it elsewhere. I think also there's other parts of the world that are trying to replicate what's going on here in Northern Ireland. I think that's great. But Northern Ireland specifically is forefronting, I think, Irish whiskey revival.
Yeah, totally.
Yes, we can talk about those distilleries in the south that are working very hard. And again, I said, this is the best tasting new release from a distillery in Ireland. And that's the truth. For people who watched Belfast Whisky Week, not 2021, but 2020, will note that I tasted Connacht whiskey before it was released, nearly a year before it was released. And to be honest, at that point, that was the first one I tasted where I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is great. Wow, we've got really good whiskey coming out of Ireland. And it brought me to my tears at that point, because I was just like, wow, I'm tasting something which I'm not used to. And and I was just like blown away. And you know what? That was good, because it was a 3-year-old liquid. It was literally about to be released there and then, and they waited a year before they got it out. But this is something different. This is, to be honest, this is a step ahead. It's a step ahead for lots of reasons. One, because it's a far superior tasting single malt. It's really just got something, it's got something mentally unforgiving about it. It's got in my head this idea that I don't even think it's a 5-year-old. I know that we talk about age statements, but this has a lot of substance to it. It comes across as being elegant and older than what it is, and in the glass. It's very complex. There's something about this. If this was given, and again, if I was lucky enough to have tasted this in the Irish Whiskey Awards as one of the judging components, I couldn't have placed this at a 5-year-old liquid. I couldn't have placed it as a youthful liquid. I couldn't have got that from this specifically. And people will, again, maybe some people will go, but it tastes, youthful. I don't think so. I think it actually has maturity, which is really, really nice. And again, it does not taste like, and this is very important, so the people out there, doesn't taste like Bushmills. It doesn't taste like, Cooley at all. It's nowhere near these people. This is a double distilled whiskey, single malt. If you're going to look for a comparison, you may want to look at some of these Scottish distilleries. And if you're going to find some comparables, you're going to find it with some Scotch. This is really, really nice. I love the word of the moment is viscosity, isn't it? The mouthfeel, this lovely way in which it actually sinks into different parts of the mouth. That it leaves its mark. It has length. We taste it. I think it's great on the nose. It's a very, very, very sweet nose, and then it just lingers. you know, it lingers on the palate for a good while. So listen, I really appreciate it. Hello, Robert. How are we? I'm glad Fiona's listening in the background and she's going to start printing off some labels. Good on. Finan O'Connor is a nightmare whenever you get Finan O'Connor talking. So no doubt he was putting people off at IWA at the awards. And listen, you know, if you can't remember, Connor, what you're drinking, sure, don't worry about it. All good whiskey, no doubt. Andrew, can you share anything on the upcoming releases? Yes, that's good. I mean, we should talk about it because quite frankly, David, you know, we could see, you know, I think what we will see is that people will do what they did. And I hope, again, local people support, you know, have supported people like Brendan Carter, they've supported Ecklandville Distillery, you know, they've supported Hinch now. I mean, Hinch has had a massive amount of local support. You know, their distillery's opened up, people have gone to the brasserie, they've gone up, people have bought lots of casks and stuff. You've not even released your cask program. One thing that a lot of distilleries have done, and we haven't spoken about this, but a lot of distilleries come out and say, do you know what, we're going to set up our distillery, and if you want to be part of it, come and buy a cask. And a lot of people have done that to finance and go through that process of getting their distillery, you know, moving, getting the actual stills in operation. And yet you haven't done that yet. You know, we're so quiet. Shortcross is so quiet that you haven't even done that yet. You know, we are at a point where actually you could go backwards and do things. You might sell a cask to someone, potentially. I don't know. Maybe you'll have a cask program. So that's not something that you might come out with and you might offer it to people. But you're not doing that as take a risk with us. Because actually, interestingly enough, unlike a lot of other distilleries, people who want to buy your cask can now judge it based on the taste and can go.
Yeah, well, I think that's
all right.
That's an important part for us. And if I'm honest, it's people that know Fiona and I will know that we're brutally honest to a fault. I couldn't willingly just ask people here to buy my cask because I'm going to tell you it's really good. So whenever we come to do a cask program, which we're going to, I'll be honest, we're going to do, it's not going to be a big program. It's going to be something hopefully where we can give something very unique to those, and we want to do it and give people the confidence and the reassurance that if you buy a cask of whiskey from us, that you're getting something that's special, that's unique, that's good. And we want people that when we do our cask, we want people not to buy it from the sense of an investment. We want people to buy it from the sense of going and enjoying the whiskey. So whenever they feel it's right, that we bottle it for them, we label it, we pack it, we ship it, and they enjoy it. And they share that whiskey with whoever they want to be, their friends, their families, their business acquaintances, or whatever. You know, because in this world where we sort of see a lot of people that sort of, I know people talk about access to finance and all these great business terms, but you know, cask programs to me should be all about the experience and getting involved in every nth detail, but also to be able to allow people to have that experience, you have to demonstrate what are you getting into. I'm an engineer, and it's great when things work on paper, but we're the difference is we want to be able to show actually we produce great liquid and be able to give people that assurance that they're going to get a great cask if they buy a cask from us. You know, but that's part of what's coming. I see some people are asking about what's next for us. Paul, I don't hope I'm not stealing your thunder. But like, okay, guys, one of the things that's coming. Sorry, I better slow down. I'm doing that Belfast thing again. I'm talking far too fast. One of the things that is coming for us, and one of the things that's actually been really important to me on our whiskey journey is peat. Now, I probably was born about 50 miles too far south of Isla, but when we actually started our whiskey journey, what got me into whiskey was actually the original Connemara Turf Moor. That sweetness, that intensity of the smoke, the flavors, the peat, that just felt so right for me. And people talk about Irish whiskey and they talk about peat, it's no place. You find me anyone on this island that doesn't have a recollection of peat and the smell of peat fires and how wonderful that is. You know, tell me someone, setting whiskey aside, that doesn't like the smell of peat or turf. You know, to me, it's the most beguiling of flavors and aromas. So for us, one of the things that we wanted to do was bring back peat, and I'm quite passionate about that. You know, so for us, we're the first distillery in NI in Ulster in over a generation, and probably close to 2 generations, to actually actively distill peat. And I say peat isn't just something that's lightly to sort of steam a little bit of turf. And you know, this is when we distill peat, we distill at what we call full fat. So that's a 55 ppm mash bill, which is pretty smoky. We double distill it, so we retain all that, the phenols, the containers. So our next release, and this is what Fiona and I are currently debating, is likely to be a peated release. It may not, but if it's not a peat, it's going to be something that no one else knows about and no one else is going to see coming. Paul, that's probably no surprise there. But you know, but guys, this is
there's no surprises here. That's the problem. It's full of surprises, David. You're just full of surprises. No, I'm excited for the peat. I think we've spoken about this at length, myself and you, when we talked about how important peat whiskey would be, peated whiskey specifically would be here. I think it's really important. You know what? The guys at Cooley, when they released the Connemara stuff, super stuff, bringing peated whiskey back into Ireland, you know, because, you know, we should have had that. Bushmills at a certain point not too long ago had a little bit of peated whiskey in there. GND are doing some peated stuff. We've got peated stuff down in West Cork. You know, we've got peated stuff, you know, filtering into different distilleries at the moment. But you're concentrating on some interesting peated whiskey. And I think this is going to be, for a lot of people, I think this will blow their minds. I think it'll just blow their minds, because a lot of people are fanatic peat drinkers, and focus in on that beautiful island you just spoke about. You know, they focus in on Islay. You know, they focus in on those great distilleries there. And Scotch whiskey still has this reputation of being a peated, peated styles. And I think if you get this right, David, I think if it's right, if it's, you know, and the consumer can understand where you're going with it, man, you're onto something very special here, because there's different market. I think there's a different buyer and a different consumer for the peated whiskey and the peated Irish whiskey. It will translate across many, many different palates, you know. But even that kind of emotion that you wanted to bring in there, which is people smell, you know, a peated fire. Everyone's been to Donegal, or they have, like, you know, the chances are 10 years ago their house had a fire where you put peat into it, because, you know, we've only just all moved on to, you know, gas, you know. So in this country specifically, it's really, you know, it's thought provoking, it's emotional, you know, you want people to get behind it. Now, I'm excited for that. Don't throw me off. Don't give me some random casking that, you know, see if you say you're going to give me a pot still instead of a peated something. I mean, because we know it's in the bag, David. We know that you've got the ability to. I was lucky enough to smell one of your casks one day. I mean, I wasn't privileged enough to have a taste. You know, I was like to smell one of your casks one day, and I said to you at that point, it was a single pot still. It was in a sherry casking, I believe, and you let me smell it. I was like, hold on a wee minute. You know, that's not a million miles away from things that people might, you know, already have an inkling about tasting, you know, or maybe like to taste. So you're not focusing on just a single malt. We've got peated, we've got pot still. You know, I'm excited, and it's full of surprises. It's like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Who knows what's going to come out in the next bottle? But it's good that people have an anticipation about it now. You know, let's see that conversation. You know,
I think there's a lot of debate about the term, what is a craft distillery, and the use of the term craft. For me, craft, and this is something that I have struggled with, but for me, craft is independence. And it's independence to do whatever the hell you want, or whatever hell time of night it is, and just create what you want to create. Yeah. And we've got some really fun stuff. Guys, I would love to be able to tell you everything right now, but that kind of, the market here, we'd not be happy with me for doing that. But for us, this is the first step of our, this and we've got some really, really cool stuff coming. And all we're doing is, all Fiona and I are asking everyone to do is to come with us on this journey. We'll get things right, we'll get things wrong, but trust me, it's going to be fun. And the one thing we haven't even talked about is what happens if we combine all the different distillate types that we have, the malts, the peanut malts, the other unusual things, like the Connswater mash, the pot still. What's that? Well, that's just Irish whiskey. And for me, all we want to do is make the best Irish whiskey that we can. And whether shape, size, gender, whatever it's going to be, and just enjoy it and actually be part of this renaissance. There's been, like, we've been through a year, we're offline, everyone's talking about technical files and everything. And yes, I'm one of the technical committee members with the IWA. You know what? See, for all the gripes, it is so civilized to revise that file. And actually, it was the big players that actually wanted some of the more innovative or unusual things. And they were actually changed in the file. They were actually shut down by the smaller players. So, Irish whiskey, the beauty of it is it's so much fun. It's not stylized the way Scotch has sort of been almost narrowed itself into this sort of little alleyway. And I think, we just want to bring great whiskey to that. And, for us, this first release, for us, people will either love it or hate it for whatever reason. But for us, we know it's good whiskey. You've got to believe in yourself. You've got to put value in yourself. And, we're just glad to be able to share what we've been doing for the last, not just the 5 years or so that this has been in the cast, but for the last 10 years. So, Sláinte.
Yeah, no, Sláinte indeed, David. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Look, I think everyone, hopefully people that were on tonight, thank you very much for joining us. Paddy asked whether or not they're individually numbered. I noticed Fiona has answered that. Yes, they are.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Well, let's just see how this pans out. Let's see what the next release is. Let's see the one after that, and just keep watching what's happening here, because I think we touched on there's potential to maybe own a cask. That'll be interesting. Who would we do? And I'm listen. There's going to be people out there that only buy casks for investment, and I know some people in the chat tonight who have done so. And congratulations and well done, and hope that works well. I think when we look at casks, it's Black Friday. Is it Black Friday today? Someone said I think it's Black Friday today. Anyway,
next Friday, I think.
To the chat. Is it?
Yeah, I double checked. I thought I missed out on something.
I don't know. I've been in a couple of shops today, and it says Black Friday deals. I'm like, oh my god, I don't know what's going on. But so I was thinking to myself, look, what can I do for Black Friday? I can say a couple of things. Obviously, for Belfast Whiskey Week, we've got some Christmas stuff. So we will have very soon, you'll see some stuff about our Christmas tastings. For everyone who came on the chat tonight and took part in the conversation up until now, I'm going to send you a wee Christmas gift. Okay, so hope everyone that came on and wrote something into the chat, well done. Thank you very much. You'll get a wee gift from me for Christmas. Look, that's my Black Friday deal for those people that really joined us. We'll send them out something nice. But I think, David, I wish you the best. And I know that you've got a new team of people starting to join you. They're going to come on. They're going to be representing you. No doubt we'll see conversations across social media. No doubt we're going to see more at different whiskey events, different whiskey shows that you maybe do, maybe virtually, maybe some of them will be physical next year. You will start to hear more, not necessarily about the gin anymore. It's now going to be a conversation about the whiskey, and people will hear more about the whiskey from Shortcross, and I really do appreciate that. Loved it. Loved the tasting this again tonight. Thank you very much, and we'll get speaking to you soon. So thank you very much, everyone. Sláinte, good evening.
Sláinte, guys. Thank you, Paul. Cheers.